so nice. Bit of 1980s tension. Oh, what the f... Hello, and yes indeed, welcome to another whiskey review with me, the Whiskey Novice. Thank you for joining me for review number 134, where I will be looking at another 18-year-old Scottish single malt, and this time it is the turn of Deanston, the Deanston 18-year-old. Before I go much further, you will notice that this is the older branding, bottling. Only slightly older, but older. And I'll get to that in a moment. Yes, the Deanston 18, bottled at 46.3%, which is the Burn Stewart Distill want. And can't blame them for that. Non-chill filtered, colour added. It does say something on the label about being very natural. It doesn't say anything on the label about not having colour added. I don't believe there's colour added, but if there isn't, why do they not just say it on the label? But it does appear very natural to me. So yes, 46.3%. It's a Highland distillery there in Doon, in an old mill. And a lovely looking place it is. I was there last year, very glad to be there. And they took a bit of a turn up, I would say, in the last sort of certainly 5-6 years. Deanston becoming very popular, ever so popular, and for good reason. And it's whiskies like this that are testament to that. They're testament to it. So I did say there's a reason why I'm reviewing the old bottling. Well, for one, it's the bottle I have. I have had the newer bottling a few times. This was actually released by Deanston in 2015, and it was the following year in 2016 that they started to rebrand, but they did it with 12-year-old and things like that. The 18 was slightly later of rebranding. And I could be wrong here, but I'm convinced, or I think there's a slight difference in maturation between the old and the new. This spent most of its maturation in ex-bourbon hogsheads and was finished in ex-first fill bourbon, whereas the newer one, the newly branded one, with the branding that they're carrying now, is fully matured in ex-first fill bourbon casks. So I'm convinced, having had the newer one, and I could be wrong, please tell me if I'm wrong here, please do, that I prefer this one to the newer one. I've had the newer one. I don't actually have a bottle here at the moment. I've had it a few times, and I just prefer this one. Maybe it's just me. I do know one thing. You can still pick this up before we get into the review. I know you'll still pick this up in certain places. I bought this off the shelf not that long ago, about a year ago. You'll pay more for the older version than you will for the newer branded version. This I paid, I think, around 80 to 85 pounds. The newer one, you'll get it at the moment, it's going places for like 63 pounds, which for an 18-year-old is outstanding. An outstanding price because it's a good whiskey. I prefer this one, but there's still very little wrong with the newer one. Right, that said, let's get into it, shall we? Barley sugar. Barley sugar is something I did with this as I do with all my reviews. When I write my tasting notes, thereafter I'll maybe check other people's reviews to see if there's anywhere we match up. And barley sugar is one term that you will hear mentioned about the Deanston 18-year-old, particularly this one. And I heard it quite a bit, read it quite a bit. So because it's there, barley sugar, ginger, honey, digestive biscuit. There are some bright citrusy notes in there, lemon and lime. 18 years hasn't dimmed the spirit in this one bit. Whatever the oak vessel here, the oakiness doesn't overly affect it. It hasn't stamped its mark all over it. I'm convinced that there's a lot of that original spirit still at play here. Yeah, the oak does with time start to show, and it shows as that vanilla, but it's not even vanilla. It's more like a burnt sugar. Well, it's actually more like creme brulee when the oak starts to show. But I'm convinced a lot of those notes, a lot of those hints on the nose are down to good spirit in the first place. Plus a good bit of balance and a good bit, whoever's responsible for this has done a bang up job, and I congratulate them. Does that sound condescending enough for you? Yeah, it's very nice. It really is. The palate. The arrival is a much softer, sweet and sour than the nose would suggest. Now, there's nothing harsh. There's nothing overly sharp in the nose, but the palate is just an awful lot rounder than I expected. And as I said, with a sweet and sour arrival. Yeah, one acclimate yourself to it. Honey. The ginger's still there. The barley sugar's still there. It's weird. It's complex without being overly complex. It's not overly fruity, although there are hints of orange. There's quite a tannic breakfast tea hint just at the very back of it, but not off-putting. And I would suggest that vanilla, that creme brulee, that burnt sugar is still there as well. So there's enough going on to keep you busy. But it's not a hugely mouth-watering, brain-tingling, it doesn't fight for one thing or another. It's just nicely balanced and plays well together. I'm finding it hard to describe actually about this one. I think it's actually the finish that to me gets some great marks. If I was to mark this, I would be giving it high marks because it's a very, very good finish on it. It's long. The memories of that crystallized ginger. There are hints of orange through the finish. And once again, barley sugar. It's definitely easy to say barley sugar, but definitely this is, I know we would tend to use that one quite a bit, but this is a prime example. I am going to add some water. It can take it. It actually likes a drop of water, this one, in my opinion. So don't be scared with the water. Give it time to settle. I usually do, or I will when I'm doing tasting notes, but here I'm just going to give you what I get. Yeah, the water brings out, I said earlier there was a hint, maybe a hint of an orange note. That orange note starts to come through. There are then notes of bourbon. There's a very definite note of bourbon. Maybe a touch of juicy fruit chewing gum, but only a touch. But it does improve it. It definitely, the water improves this one. It's in the palate that it improves most. It just rounds off any edges, softens it down a little, sweetens it up a wee bit. And I think even the mouth feels better with that touch of water. It spreads better. It's even more balanced than it was before. So yeah, Don't be afraid to add water, folk. Please do. Yeah, lovely. Finish doesn't change an awful lot, but that's a good thing because the finish was good anyway. It certainly doesn't diminish. It doesn't get any shorter. So yeah, yes, I would highly recommend this. I have convinced myself that there is a difference between this bottling and the newer branded bottling. As I said, if I'm wrong, please let me know. Maybe it's all in my head. But this is good stuff. It is good stuff. As I say, I paid 85. Even at £85, it was a good price for this whiskey, in my opinion. Sometimes it's safest just to say, this is good, tasty, well-made stuff. There. Yeah, good, tasty, well-made stuff. Describes it well. It's one that I'm glad I have, and one that I'm glad to have tried. So what would I suggest to you? Well, I'm going to do a bit of a reverse again, and you're maybe a bit surprised by this actually. I had a whiskey in my head. It was actually staying with Bird Stewart. I was toying with the idea of the Tobermory 12-year-old, but it didn't. I don't know. It was more floral or fruity or something when I tried it against this. And I went to a whiskey that I get the impression people think I don't like. And it's not that I don't like it. I do. I really like it up to a point. It's this, the R10-year-old. And given, and I'm going, as I said, as a bit of a reverse, given Aaron's popularity, I would imagine an awful lot of you have tried it. But you may not have tried Deanston 18. So it's a bit of a reverse, this one. I'm going to suggest that, if well, I mean, you can have it whatever way around you like. If you've had Deanston 18, you really enjoyed it, and you haven't an R10-year-old, well, then I would recommend it. What I was saying, if you didn't see my review, I'll throw a link for it up in here, is my problem with R10-year-old is there's a very bitter tannic finish on it, in my impression, and it just put me off it. And I've went back to it a few times, tried it, thinking that it was maybe just me, but no, I'm just not overly struck by it, and that's just me. But if you, as I say, I'm flipping this around a bit. If you were and you really enjoyed R10-year-old, well then Deanston 18 for me is a huge step up, because it has a lot of that barley sugar honey feeling the whole way built up. The difference being that this one's got a class finish for me, and this one doesn't. It's the opposite. Well, it's just an opinion, remember. So yeah, Deanston 18, you like it, give R10 a go if you haven't tried it. R10, you like it, give Deanston 18 a go. It would be worth it. That's about that. I feel like I blithered through that one a wee bit, but it's just sometimes, as I said, I keep saying as I said, but it's just good, tasty, well-made whiskey. It doesn't have to be broken down into small parts. Maybe the big parts are prominent enough to speak for themselves. Right, I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much for joining me. Pleasure to have you as always. Thank you very much to my patrons. If you wish to join that group, the details are, of course, as per usual, in the video description below. Thank you very much for joining me. Until the next time, my friends, look after yourselves, take care, here's to your good health. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.